Hey, what's going on, everybody? Today is March 18th, 2024, and you're watching the Daily AI Show live. And today we have Beth, Jyunmi, Karl, Andy, and I'm Brian. And today we're going to kind of circle back to a topic we've talked about before, and we definitely won't be the last time we talk about that, but talk about it, which is sort of some of the news that's coming out from Figure and some other ones about AI and robotics and that meshing together. And by the way, just not just humanoid robots. I mean, we probably could do a whole show on that. And we sort of talked about humanoid robots, meaning human form, the ones where you see the robots walking, that like Figure would be a good example of that. But other types of robots too. In fact, there was a great story this weekend that I really want to dive into that came out. And it's more or less two robot hands doing massage. And we'll dive into that more or whatever, but it's a good example, I think. And where I'm hoping this conversation goes is to, like, I was just saying this in a post on one of Rachel Wood's posts. Like, if you're sitting at your desk and thinking to yourself, I'm safe. Like, you have the wrong approach towards AI. And I wonder if I was a massage therapist, if I just finished school and all of a sudden this technology comes out and people are like, the few people that have done it are sort of raving about it and things like that. And you go like, "Ooh, I didn't expect AI to be so close to my job so soon," you know? And then there's that sort of panic that sets in of like, am I being replaced? Is everybody going to go this way? So anyway, that's sort of the topic of today. Is where my brain is. I've been thinking about this all weekend. I'm thinking this is going to be a fun topic. I guess let's start with Figure. So, Figure, that also came out like in the last week, I would say. And they had this, we can share a video of it or parts of it, but basically it's like Figure, which is a humanoid robot, plus OpenAI is the way they sort of built it. And that's interesting because like a lot of videos that we see out there, we've talked about it, right, Jyunmi? The idea that how edited are these videos, even if they look seamless, we know that they could be splicing, that thing latency could be toyed with and all that. So we don't know. But in this particular case, a guy is standing at a table. The robot, the Figure robot is standing there, and he gives him an apple. There's some plates and some cups in front of him. He's able to multitask, which was really interesting because I don't think we've seen necessarily examples of that, where he cleans up a mess, right? He organizes and puts things in a basket. He meaning the robot, by the way. The robot organizing, cleans up the mess while also explaining why he had handed this apple to the guy that was standing there at the table. Really, really interesting. I saw a lot of news and people were like, "Oh my God, this is it, blah, blah, blah." And I was like, "Oh, I don't know. I feel like we should pump the brakes here a little bit." So let's start there. What did you guys think when you first saw the news that rolled out about Figure? Were you like instantly impressed, or were you maybe more like me and thinking, okay, what aren't they telling us? What aren't they showing us? Is this just yet another highly produced AI video, and it secretly is Google behind it? That was where I was.
I was thinking about, but we've seen a lot of these demos before, whether it's humanoid form, animal form. Like I think I can't remember the company that showed this kind of dog-looking robot.
Austin robot. Yeah.
And then you've seen like demos of Amazon robots in factories doing stuff. I can't remember what Tesla's robot is called. So, there's a trend there. There's a trend of robots doing more and more and more stuff. And then I'm assuming this Figure, I think it's using GPT-4. So
it says that. And it says OpenAI. It actually doesn't tell us.
Which is my question, because clearly it has the ability to reason. And that's part of the new models that they're anticipating. Like, I'm not sure it's using GPT-4, but keep going, Karl.
Sure. and we can see but we can all see the trend line and the progress, right? So all these large language models have some sort of multimodal capabilities. They have some sort of vision. Then you have all these robots every single demo seems to be getting a little bit better and better. I don't think it's better yet to the point where you can mass produce it and there was a podcast, This Life in AI. I don't know, there's two Australian guys. Anyway,
This day.
yeah, This Day in AI. And the what they were, their big mantra is, unless you can actually use these things, it doesn't really count. Like we can see all the demos. But if you think about it, we're gonna have an amazing robot that can do a lot of these things. Let's say it has GPT-5 or higher, definitely higher level reasoning. Think about what all of us will probably end up using it for. Taking out garbage, taking out recycling, cooking for us, right?
Walking the dog.
Yeah, and walking the dog really slowly in some cases. But there was a really good, I think it was on the podcast, The Breakthrough, where they were talking about, are we actually going to create robotic slaves where we're going to make it do all the things we do not want to do, put it through the crazy ringer? And the question they started posting is like, what kind of ethics are we talking about here about making these things do everything, like just abusing these things to the max? And I don't know if we want to go down that route, but it's a very interesting thing. And then it got me thinking, well, why does it have to look humanoid? Can it look something else that dehumanizes this thing, so then we can make it do all the things we don't want it to do?
Yeah, I was going to say, the ethical question arises if you personify the robot with consciousness and you start to concern yourself whether it cares about what it's doing or it has the awareness to even begin to care. So yeah, embodying AI is a very important trend. Because agency is a very important trend, and you want that agency to extend into the real world, maybe into your own home. And there are a lot of complications with that I want to talk about a little bit here. But I'm all about, embodying AI, at least in the sense that it can take actions in physical space. Now, that may be not a humanoid robot. I mean, when you look at Figure and you look at a video that isn't shown in the demo where it's standing still and operating its very, very dexterous hands. If you look at its ambulation, when it does its ambulation routine and is walking, it's painful. And it's like you have to go back 10 years at Boston Dynamics to see such a poor performance in walking around your home. So Boston Dynamics is way ahead when it comes to mobility of robots, right? Like, and probably because they're focused largely, I believe, on the military applications. The Boston Dynamics team has developed, endurance with battery and weight. So here you get Figure's 130 pounds. It has 4 hours of endurance. So it's going to be like C-3PO. It's going to say, I'm going to shut down now and recharge. How long does it take to recharge that battery? Well, you can have a fast charger. Maybe it's only 15, 20 minutes. So there's a complication in terms of endurance of an embodied AI, an embodied robot in the home. But a bigger concern for me would be, how do you maintain these things? How do you deliver them? Here's this 130-pound object that once its power runs out, you can't move it. If it can move itself, great. But how do you move it? You have to have a trolley track around your house to kind of hoist the robot up and take it to a charging station. There's a bunch of different issues that are going to present themselves before we ever really see these things penetrate the home. Unless it's much smaller, as you suggest, Karl, and limited in the scope of its actuation. Like if it can turn on a light switch, you don't need a robot hand to do that. That could be done electronically with a solenoid, right? So AI can be connected to the smart home. Where do you really need an embodied humanoid robot to assist? And maybe doing the dishes is the only example that we can come up with.
Well, I think too, okay, and that's the home, I mean, and maybe there, I mean, I'm sure there's a future where there's like a humanoid robot in homes. I'm guessing that probably starts in homes where you have disabled folks, not, I should just say non-ambulatory. Good God, I can remember, I know Beth, you sort of talked about this with family too, but just as having to move patients as a firefighter and going into homes in an EMT and move patients and do the bed roll and get the sheet underneath the patient and transfer patients was a 3 or 4 or 5 guy operation. And you figure there are there are family members at home doing this by themselves day in and day out. They've got it down to a process. They've got it as efficient as it possibly can, but it is probably beating on their body at the same time. But you do what you got to do, right? We're all going to step up and do it. And so I think, okay, in the home, this is where I start to see like these types of robots starting to make a big difference, because if it can step in and help move somebody in a safe way without injuring another human. I will tell you a quick personal story. I wasn't there for it, but when my mom was in her last month of life, I would say, because she spent her last 2 weeks in hospice care. Prior to that, she was still at the house with my dad, 2-story house. It may not have been in the last month. I may have the dates wrong, but the point is this. She was going upstairs and she was already at the point where she was frail, and my dad would go up and down the stairs with her, and my mom's legs gave out. And my dad had a moment halfway up the stairs of, are we both going down the stairs together? Like he said, it was the moment where he thought, okay, I can no longer do this on my own. My dad is a prideful man. He's strong, he's fit. And then this is 15 years ago as it is. But he had that moment where he said, I grabbed the railing, I grabbed your mom, and by the grace of God, we both didn't go backwards down the stairs and damn near kill us. So I just look at stairs, I look at things like that, and I go, we have stair chairs and things like that. But what will be the robot, the AI robot of the future that steps in to these roles for home care? It makes a big difference for people. So I'm curious about that. But anyway, my point was to say, like, I also want to talk about like the robots and where human robots are in manufacturing, and more of the iRobot type level where there's 100 of them. Or if you go to Disney, you see 100 stormtroopers all standing there looking back at you on one of the rides. Like, is that where I think it is, where they're all plugged in, Andy, and they all have their charging ports, and they're being rotated out on 3-hour and 45-minute rotations, so they're always charged and they're always working. That's kind of where I see it going as far as like what the figure robot, the Boston Dynamics. Go ahead, Beth.
I would agree. I would say that there is there's a crossover in this. So I'm thinking that the baby boomers are aging, right? And they have a fair amount of money in terms of generational, if we look at generations that are going to adopt this. And so I think it's entirely possible that the baby boomers are going to be buying the take out the trash robot and like hold this thing so that I don't have to bug my neighbor to hold it while I like hold the other part and we're lifting something together. And then you do have the robot in your house that you now know how to use when someone's fallen and you need to help them off the ground, or you then need to move into this kind of more embedded kind of care. But I agree, Andy, there's like maybe a small square footage that you're doing stuff, and maybe it has like it's not gonna have sneakers, but it has like those pop out wheel things that you're just like a manual a manual switch that you're just gonna be able to push it over toward the charging. I don't know, but yeah.
Well, I'm going to be a little more reserved on this. I personally love this stuff. I'm a big sci-fi nerd. So yeah, robots, sure, it'll be fun. I agree, Brian, that I think what we're seeing now is sort of like the concept car or the fashion that that is released in Milan. These are all things that we're going to see down the road, or at least elements of that we're going to see introduced into our daily lives. I think if you had a perfect robot right now, you would have natural human resistance. And if you're talking about personal robots or healthcare robots, I think there's even more resistance to that. I think you won't see it on a mainstream integration until millennials are ready to be put into, retire and start to age out. That's how far I see the pushback for that. Because I think right now, anyone that is Gen X or older is going to have a natural resistance for putting this into our home, except for the gadget people. I'm sure I'll have one as soon as I can afford it. And that's the other question too, is I don't think there's been a price point set what they want to mass release these at. And I can guarantee you it's going to be like a car. So
way more.
Yeah, exactly. So this is not going to be introduced, the saturation into the populace is going to be very, very low. Now, I think the number one inflection point we're going to see is warehouse work, is industrial work, and those kinds of things. And Amazon's been building up to it for years now. They've already got robots recognizing where their packages are on their shelves and everything like that, and bringing it out to the packers. So we're definitely going to see an influx there. Also in shipping and automotive and trucking and all those kinds of things. And for the example about the massage, when I go for a massage, it's not just the 30 minutes of shoulders, legs, feet. That's what a massage chair is for. I'm not sure. I haven't experienced this, so can't say for sure. But having the human element seems far more important to me than the robotic experience. But I will reserve that opinion until I've actually experienced it.
I think this is a great point, Jimmy. I want to talk about this really quick because you said something that exactly my wife. We had this discussion in my house this weekend. I was like, babe, check out Escape, by the way. It's AESCAPE. They're just starting to roll them out on some Equinoxes just in New York City. So it's not like you can go do this anywhere. And I was like, hey, check this out. I was like, number one, 0 human interaction. Don't need to get naked. Don't have to do that. Don't have to have that interaction. Don't have to have several conversations about like, yeah, I want more pressure in this area, but I want less in this area. All this stuff, right? So you actually wear like a bodysuit because the way those hands that I was just showing on the screen work better with pressure and stuff. But you're also, what you might not have seen on there is through where your head is like naturally laying down, like the donut where your head is laying down, there's a touch screen right in front of you for you to see exactly what's going on after they did the 3D scan. Now, I'm like, Jimmy, I'm the guy, like, where and when and where do I sign up? And I'll go do this tomorrow, right? My wife is like, robot that mistakes and presses too hard right on my spine and paralyzes me. No thanks. That was exactly what my wife said. Now we're 1 year apart in age, mid-40s, right? And she had a totally different response, which I think it's funny that you kind of bring that up, Jimmy. It was like, I don't know, I want the human interaction or response. And I'm thinking to myself, no, I want the massage. I don't want the human interaction. I don't want to talk to the masseuse. I mean, I love that the people are talented and know that. But if there's a robot that solves all those little minor pain points for me, I'm going the robot route. And I wouldn't even think about my spine. I'd be like, but babe, it's trained to do like your muscles in a 3D scan. She's like, robots can mess up. I was like, you're right. I mean, So anyway, I just want to bring that up really quick. I didn't mean to interrupt, but
we had that conversation on a prior show, I recall. And the issue with when you have an actuator in the home or on or near your body is that if it makes a mistake ever, the consequences are really huge and the liabilities are really huge. So there's a lot of testing and training that has to be done before you'll feel comfortable having something that can exert incredible forces enough to lift a human body off a bed, right?
Right.
In your home and, under your guidance. So anyway, that's an important issue. I wanted to just jump over to the educational applications and the companion applications of embodied AI. So there are a number of companies out there that are doing robots that have a physical presence and have sensors in them and also have vision camera, and actually can move, can actuate their physical presence in the space, and that are being used to assist children. For example, embodied ink is one that I'm sure you guys saw. Learning robots that support children academically and emotionally, using conversational AI, but also a physical presence, because you don't want this thing to be a ghostly, voice in the sky. It wants to have something that, fits with the human's understanding of something that's there with them in order to appeal to the emotional requirements there. Educational assistance and security surveillance from a company called Solucio. So the security thing is interesting. If I have a robot, even a small one, that can, be traveling the perimeter of my property, like during the day, during the night, and it can alert me, awaken me as necessary. That's a pretty interesting application, especially in a world of conflict where I guess every one of us has had the thought at one point or another where combination of pandemic and socioeconomic disparities leads to some uprising. And how do you defend you and your kin? Right. So there will be defense robots like that first don't have weapons. But, you can imagine people going in that direction. And then I really like the healthcare application. So we're talking about education, healthcare, surveillance, just, personal, robots that are movable and can surveil. Those are the things that I think will, be more, they'll be more present in our lives sooner than will humanoid robots inside the home.
I think, Andy, you're right. Like not the robot that can do everything, which I think like people are thinking about, but those individual task specific, I don't even know if you call them a robot, to do specific things, one or two things or one group of things, and that's all they do. Because it's really hard to get something, and it's really interesting that every single time we anthropomorphize anything like humans, it's this type of thing. It's like, why are we building robots that look like humans? Why are we building things that look like animals? Couldn't you build something that looks completely different, built to the task or tasks that it needs to do, rather than trying to mimic humans with arms and legs? So I was always figuring that's like, robots could be anything. It could be, it doesn't have to have legs. It could be on wheels. It could be on like a ball. Like, what are those things that make it easier to be able to transverse its environment without having really slow, weird kind of like, it like bumbles around. So that's where I'm thinking like there are, super, 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 super early days, but I think like companies will figure out, hey, why do we have to have it do this? Why does it need like legs? Why does it need arms? A better way to do it would be multiple arms, like 6 arms, or no legs, just a ball that it rolls around, that it can traverse or tracks or whatever it is. So I'm thinking we're probably going to get to a place that maybe the robot doesn't look human. Maybe it's actually built in a way that does specific things, which could be really, really interesting to see.
Right. There are, and there, you see this. I think that the robots that look human and have like dexterity in their hands are the ones that are getting the most play because people are paying attention to them. But there was a recent video of basically a transformer robot that had that basically one of its shapes could be a ball, and then it broke into parts, and those parts could be legs, those parts could be and they were shaped like the triangles that formed the ball when it all came together. But this robot was designed, it was a experimental, right? Just seeing if this is proof of concept, but it could decide what was the most appropriate shape for the environment that it was in. And it could use a little push and then it could roll. Right. And that when we get back into like how much power is it using, it is acknowledging its environment and using the least amount of power to do what it needs to do in order to get where it needs to get. And I will say that as president of the board of my condominium association, we've been looking at security options, and I'm like, so is anybody using the robot dog? Right? Like, I don't want the robot dog ranging the perimeter because of power issues, but I would love the camera to say, hey, something happening over here, send the robot dog, that then like shows like giant light and has a like, you are being recorded, right? Or like whatever this is. And I will say complete crickets from the rest of my team. Right? Like, I was like, oh, I'm a couple of years ahead, apparently.
Yeah,
Right.
I did see the movie Code 8. I don't know if you like, it's on Netflix.
Oh yeah.
Right. And then you start looking, because that's what reminded me of the robot dog, where it could scan your face and all that kind of fun stuff. And I was just like, does it need to be a dog? Like, why does it have to be a dog? Like,
No, and I just mean that four-legged thing.
I think back to that point, Karl, real quick. I just want to touch on that. Here's my answer: educated, uneducated. I'm not sure, but I would say like humanoid robots have a place in environments that aren't custom built for robots. If it's a manufacturing, I can custom build that environment for wheels, for whatever. And in those cases, you got to think to yourself like, yeah, why would you go with a humanoid version? But if we need robots for places that are custom built, houses, buildings, stairs, schools, anything like that, that's built for humans, you're going to have a robot that can easily transverse carpet to floor, to stairs, to slippery, to all the things that we intuitively do as humans. And I mean, we fall and we fail and all that stuff too. We slip, trip, and fall too. But we're going to need robots that can do all of the things that we're able to do, not because it needs to look like us, because it needs to be able to accurately interact with our environment, and our environment's built for us. So I think that's more the answer, the way I look at it. Now, does it need to have a human face? Does it need to look like it could wince or something like that? Do we want to see that? Which kind of goes back to your initial point, Karl, what you were saying, Andy, about, do we want any sort of consciousness in there? Like, do you want any robot to turn to you and go, ow? Whether it's just programmed or not, does anybody want that? Like, I'm thinking, no, nobody wants to hear the robot go, ow, or I don't want to do this anymore. I think that's part of it,
I think we do need to mention, though, the possible psychological factor here, and the reasons why humanoid shape or a dog shape would be chosen. And because all of the examples that we've shown of the dog shape has been for security. Well, humans now already associate, certain breeds of dogs and certain actions with a security or law enforcement connection in their minds, right? You see a German Shepherd, and it's just like, oh, that's a police dog, those kinds of things. Yeah.
What?
So I think there's a psychological factor in there is why certain forms are chosen. Also, I agree with Brian. Yes, there's probably there's a practical reason for robots to live in human spaces, but I also think from the sales aspect, it's probably easier to sell a robot that's like, oh, it can do all these things that I know that people can do. So there's that factor as well in determining or helping a sale to go through. It's like, oh, instead of X, Y, and Z employees, I can have this replace it, because I know it can do the same thing a person can do. Now, I don't want to be alarmist or anything like that, but I'm sure there is that psychological factor in choosing these forms.
But that same psychological,
we are really away from houses that are now being built to accommodate whatever the foremost AI robot technology is of the time. Just look at a house and look at wiring and go, how important it was to have cable in all rooms. When you had a house built out in the 90s, you're like, just put a cable coaxial in every room. I don't know where I'm going to want a TV, but just do it. Now I would say the same thing about Ethernet. I don't know. And maybe in 5 years, I no longer say that about Ethernet because Wi-Fi is so good and it's so accurate and it's so fast that why would I tether myself to any wall anywhere? These are all things we've watched just in our lifetime of houses. So like, I mean, really, are we that far away from, oh, this house was built in 2035 and it already comes pre-built in with the 4 charging stations you're going to want for your AI robot and the thing that quickly moves the robot from upstairs to downstairs because it's like a built-in track along the side of your stairs built into the wall. You'll just be happy it's there because you don't have to custom retrofit later. Like, I mean, come on, we know this is coming in some way. I don't know what the robot is, I don't know what it's going to look like, but we know the Roombas are going to get smarter. So like, it's like, how is that going to play into our houses?
I want to say that I think that a logical progression is to take Roombas, build them a little bit larger with more abilities and AI, so they're conversational, and an arm that can lift, can go up with a camera on it and look at some scene, like on top of a table, pick up an object that you've asked it to retrieve, put it on its back, and come back to you. Right?
Mm-hmm. And Roombas do go and charge themselves as well with the battery after they're done.
That's more like what I expect to find.
This is
Roomba. Contact us. We'll build out that AI solution for you.
This is Landroba. So it goes and it hits something. It's like, ooh, okay, there's something on the floor. I pick it up. I put it in the basket that's on my back, right? And now it gets to vacuum and pick up at the same time. Then go charge itself.
Which would be great in my house with shoes. Hey, I do want to bring up, I just want to go through because I'm just sharing the screen really quick for anybody just listening to us. I'm just going to flip through a couple different companies that are in this space. And I am sure there's 40 more. I mean, Andy, you mentioned 3 or 4 that I hadn't heard of. This is Boston Robotics site, and they have a little video playing here. What they're showing though is like custom purpose robots from everything that have a whole bunch of suction cups, and they're moving packages along like an assembly line or like you would see at a UPS maybe facility coming out of Connex buildings. Then they're showing their more humanoid ones, which they've shown through the years. They have Spot, which I think is the yellow robot dog, that the one they're showing now, that I think a lot of people are familiar with, that's been around forever and ever. That was like the first time I remember people be like, well, it's a great job, humans. High fives. Like, thanks knowing you. The Boston Dynamics robot dog Spot's going to come for all of us, As soon as you put a weapon on it, it's game over. So that's why robotics has been in the business for a long time, but there's others. So we talked about Figure. This is Figure that just came out, not just came out last week. They've had a robot for a while called their 01 or 1. I'm not sure how they say it, but they were in the news because of what we were talking about earlier with integrations with OpenAI. It's showing it walking, moving things. It's tethered while it's walking and also walks very, very slowly. Then you have things like Hanson AI. If anybody remembers Sophia. Sophia is a robot that has a very human latex looking face. Sophia has been in the news many, many times over the years, certainly not just on the last year or two. So that's Hanson Robotics and what they're doing. I guess they're trying to look, they are definitely working towards having robots that are very, very human looking all the way to the face, which you don't always see. A lot of times it's just a robot face. So really interesting what they're doing. You have 1X Technologies, who have also building out androids, as they say, built to meet the world's labor demands. So obviously they're working more towards labor and manufacturing and things. They're on wheels, kind of like you were talking about, Karl, but the top of them looks a little bit more humanoid where they have arms. So they show them wheeling and gathering things out of trucks and moving curtains and containers around and doing a full squat while it's picking things up. Like really, really cool stuff there.
And they have the digital face. I don't like the digital face.
The digital face kind of weirds me out because, like, if you can put a digital face that smiles, what happens if it frowns? Right.
Well, it goes along with the ow,
And just a short comment. The video, I need to question their choice of their narrative choices. Because the video opens up with a dark space opening up, and then the glowing faces of the robots all uniformly coming out of the darkness.
Which one was
Wait
that?
for a sci-fi movie. I was all about selling it.
That's the,
Was
that's
that
the
one
digital
Extra? Which
faces.
one did that?
That's the
This one,
digital faces. And they all had the same digital expression on their faces, right? Like unmoving, just sort of
Yeah.
like,
And when you walk in the room, they all go, "Nice to see you, Beth," in unison.
yeah. No.
Apptronics, and then we have, of course, Tesla, the Tesla bot, or I think they also call it Optimus. I'm not exactly sure if that's exactly the same robot, but Tesla's obviously been a big worker in your space. And like I said, there's probably 30 more. There's actually an article here talking about like how Mercedes-Benz has been using the Apptronics ones. Their humanoid robots called Apollo, and they're using that on assembly lines and so on and so on. And then, eventually it just gets to iRobot, and he's, Will Smith is walking through rows and rows of robots. And of course, in that creepy scene from way, way back, the robot turns and looks at him. Like one face moves and they're not supposed to move, right? And the one has got sort of sentient ability and stuff like that. So just wanted to kind of run through a couple of different companies that are obviously out there, and they're all like in their own spaces, kind of like what you're saying, Karl. Like we're just focusing on manufacturing. Then you have what Boston Robotics is doing, which is they have 7 different types of robots, and they're not just focused on one. They've also been in the game. I don't know. I feel like they've been in the game longer, or it's just that they've been in the news more, and so like the public profile, we've seen it more. But I don't know. Maybe there's been companies that have been doing this much, much longer than Boston Dynamics. I'm not sure. Okay, as we wrap things up, I don't know your guys' sort of thought on this. We talked about robots and how it could be coming for the jobs of masseuses, and they're very purpose built, and they do not look anything like humanoids. They will mix your drinks. They'll fry your fries. They'll take your orders at drive-thrus. They'll give you a massage. We've seen this. They'll bake your pizza and give it to you out of a vending machine. Like we've seen this over and over and over again, where it's basically the automated arms doing a variety of different topics or skills. And then we have all of this stuff, right? The humanoid robots, the moving, the machines running through factories, Amazon, so on and so forth. So I don't know. What's your sort of final thoughts on this, guys, if I can speak?
I would say I hate making predictions, but roughly I'll say 5 years for commercial robots. So warehouse, trucks, cleaning truck, street cleaners, all those kinds of use. And we'll see that mass adoption at that point. And in 10 years, I think that's where we'll really have the accepted robot or consistent robot in the home. Yeah.
I'd say industrial robots are already 10 years ago, right? So that's where you'll see the inclusion, as Mercedes-Benz has announced, of humanoid robots that are going to be used in very niche applications where, maybe there's, a restriction for humans going into a certain space, but you need something that's dexterous and also reprogrammable easily through conversation. I'm skeptical on anything beyond the Roomba advancements for the whole. I don't see the economics making sense or the maintenance and support for that happening.
So I think they're already starting to implement security aspects, and we'll continue to do that, and we'll see whether non kind of industrial communities adopt them. I think they will at some point, and I'm not sure when that will be the tipping point.
All right, that'll leave it for today. Then the rest of this week, tomorrow, we're talking about worms, and that when we're talking about AI malware and the problems that are coming or already here. Wednesday, we'll be talking about the news. Thursday, we're talking about AI hype versus reality, and that kind of comes right out of today's show, right? Is this a hype bubble? Is AI really there? And can AI really even keep up at this point with what people think it should be able to do, which is a real problem if people's perception is that AI is constantly underperforming, despite the fact that we know that AI is doing things that have never been done before. But we're really good at moving the goalposts. So we'll talk about that on Thursday. And then Friday, we have our 2-week bi-weekly recap show where we'll be talking about all the things we talked about over the last 2 weeks. So keep coming back all week, guys. We got a lot of fun shows. I'm really excited about the topics this week. And we will see you then. Bye.
Aloha.